The last thing my mother said before cutting me out of the family was, "You stole from your own sister." 3 days later, my father changed the locks on my childhood home, my brother stopped answering my calls, and my sister told everyone I was dangerous. I knew I was innocent, but I had no idea who had lied or why. The first time my family called me a thief, I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes, when someone accuses you of something so opposite to who you are, your brain refuses to accept the words. I remember standing in my parents' kitchen with a grocery bag still in my hand. It was a Tuesday evening. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table. My father stood behind her with his arms folded. My older brother, Daniel, was leaning against the refrigerator. And my younger sister, Claire, was crying. Not quietly. She was crying the way people cry when they want everyone in the room to know they're hurt. I looked at her. Then, at my parents. Then, back at her. What exactly did I steal? Nobody answered. That silence was the moment I should have understood that something much bigger was happening. Instead, I thought there had been some misunderstanding. I put the grocery bag on the counter. "Mom, seriously, what happened?" My mother looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, disappointment. Somehow, that hurt more. "You know what happened," she said. "No, I don't." "You took Claire's money." My stomach dropped. "What money?" Daniel scoffed. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Pretend you don't know." I looked at my father. "Dad?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. My sister wiped her face. "The money from the account." "What account?" "The savings account." I stared at her. Claire had been saving for almost 2 years. She was 24 at the time, and she wanted to open a small photography studio. She'd talked about it constantly. She wanted a little storefront with white walls, large windows, and a dark wooden counter. I'd helped her design the logo. I'd even built her first website, because she couldn't afford a professional one. I knew how important that dream was to her. So when she said I had taken her money, I didn't even understand what she meant. "How much?" My mother answered. $18,000. I actually laughed again. "Mom, I don't have $18,000. You had access to the account." "So did Claire." "She said you knew the password." "I helped her set up online banking." "You had the password." "I did years ago. She changed it." Daniel pushed himself away from the refrigerator. "You were the only person outside the family who knew about that account." "That isn't true." "Then who else?" "I don't know." My father finally spoke. "That's the problem, Emily." His voice was quiet, almost tired. "We don't know." I looked around the kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd eaten birthday cakes. Where my father had taught me how to change a tire using a jack he'd dragged onto the driveway. Where my mother had once sat beside me at 2 in the morning while I cried over a breakup. Where Claire and I had spent an entire summer making ridiculous smoothies and pretending we were going to become famous influencers. And now all 4 of them were looking at me like I was a stranger. "I didn't take her money." Claire stood up. "Yes, you did." "No. You were jealous." That word hit me harder than the accusation. "Jealous?" "You always said my business idea was unrealistic." "I said opening a studio before you had enough clients was risky." "Exactly. That doesn't mean I stole from you." "You were angry because Mom and Dad were going to help me." I looked at my mother. "Is that what this is about?" She didn't answer. Claire's voice cracked. "You've always resented me." I stared at her. I wanted to argue. I wanted to list every time I'd helped her. Every ride. Every loan. Every late-night phone call. Every time she'd called me because she needed someone. But suddenly I realized something. None of that mattered. They had already decided. The trial was over. They were just waiting for me to confess. I picked up my grocery bag. "Fine." My mother's eyebrows tightened. "Fine? I didn't do it." "You don't believe me. I can't force you." My father looked at me. "Emily, if you know anything." "I don't." "Then why won't you let us look through your things?" I froze. "What?" "Your apartment," Daniel said. "We'll go with you." "No." "Then you're hiding something." I looked at my father. "Dad, do you really think I stole $18,000? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That was my answer. I put the grocery bag back down. "Okay." I walked toward the door. My mother called after me. "If you leave now, don't expect us to pretend this didn't happen." I turned around. I haven't asked you to pretend anything. Then I left. I expected them to call me that night. They didn't. I expected my father to call the next morning. He didn't. By Thursday my sister had blocked me. By Friday my brother had blocked me. On Saturday morning, my father sent me one message. Don't come to the house for now. I stared at those 5 words for almost 10 minutes. That was my childhood home. My bedroom was still upstairs. My high school trophies were in a box in the basement. There were photographs of me on the walls. But suddenly, I wasn't welcome there. I replied, okay. That was all. 2 hours later, my mother called. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Her voice was cold. Your father changed the locks. I swallowed. Why are you telling me? Because you still have things here. I'll collect them another time. Don't come alone. I closed my eyes. Mom, what? I didn't steal Claire's money. There was a long silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. I wish I could believe you. She hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed, and for the first time since the accusation, I cried. Not because of the money, because my mother had chosen a lie over me. I just didn't know yet who had told her the lie. For the next few months, I tried to rebuild my life without my family. It was harder than I expected. People imagine being cut off as some dramatic event, a slammed door, a screaming match, someone saying, "You're dead to me." But sometimes, estrangement is quieter. It is the birthday invitation that doesn't arrive, the family group chat that suddenly goes silent, the photograph you see online from a dinner you weren't told about, the Christmas morning when you realize nobody has asked what you're doing. The hardest part wasn't being alone. It was constantly wondering whether I had missed something. I replayed that night again and again. Had I said something wrong? Had I offended Claire? Had someone seen me near her paperwork? Had I accidentally transferred money while helping her with her banking? I checked every account I had. Nothing. I went through my emails. Nothing. My bank records showed no unusual deposits. I even contacted my bank and asked whether there had been any suspicious activity. There hadn't. I knew I was innocent. But knowing the truth yourself and getting other people to believe it are two very different things. I eventually stopped trying. I found a small apartment across town. I took a second job for a while. I started spending weekends with people who didn't know my family. And slowly, painfully, I began building a life that didn't require their approval. Then something strange happened. About 8 months after the accusation, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It was old. A picture of my sister and me when we were children. We were maybe 10 and 12. We were sitting on the porch of my grandparents' old house. Claire was holding a broken bicycle wheel. I was laughing. On the back of the photograph was one sentence. You were never the one they should have blamed. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know who sent it. I almost threw it away. Instead, I put it in a drawer. I didn't tell my family. There was no point. If they wanted to talk to me, they knew where I lived. Months passed. Then a year. Then another. I stopped expecting anything. I got promoted at work. I moved into a better apartment. I started dating someone named Marcus. He knew about my family, but I didn't tell him every detail at first. I was embarrassed, not because I'd done anything wrong, because I was afraid people would think there was something wrong with me if my own family didn't want me. One night, after we'd been together for several months, Marcus asked me why I never talked about holidays. I shrugged. Family stuff is complicated. He didn't push. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He understood that silence wasn't always an invitation to ask more questions. Eventually, I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. Did you steal the money? I almost smiled. No. I know. You don't even know me that well. I know you well enough. That sentence stayed with me, because my family had known me for decades. And somehow, a man who had known me for less than 2 years believed me without demanding proof. 3 years after my family cut me off, I received another envelope. This time, there was a name on it. Claire. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. Inside was a letter. There were only 6 words on the first page. Emily, I need to tell you everything. I almost stopped reading. Instead, I sat down. The letter was 6 pages long. Claire explained that the $18,000 had not simply disappeared. She had transferred it herself. Not to my account. To a business account. A business account belonging to a man named Stephen. Stephen had been her boyfriend at the time. I had never liked him. Not because he was rude. He was actually charming. Too charming. He always had an explanation for everything. He told Claire he knew investors who could help her photography business. He convinced her that she needed to move the money temporarily so he could secure a lease and equipment at a discount. Claire trusted him. Then the money disappeared. Stephen disappeared too. But when Claire realized what had happened, she panicked. She knew my parents would be furious. And she was terrified that they'd blame her. So she told them she hadn't authorized the transfer. Then she remembered that I had once helped her set up the account. She told them I had known the old password. She said she thought I might have taken the money. My mother believed her. My father believed her. Daniel believed them. But there was more. Claire had also found a message from Stephen that made it look like someone else had accessed her account. She never showed it to my parents. She never showed it to me. She hid it. And the reason was brutally simple. She was afraid of losing her relationship, afraid of disappointing our parents, afraid of admitting she'd made a terrible mistake. The final page was the hardest to read. Claire wrote, "I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, the truth would somehow become less real. Instead, I watched them destroy you with something I knew wasn't true." I put the letter down. I couldn't breathe properly. 3 years. 3 years of silence. 3 years of birthdays without my parents. 3 years of wondering what I had done wrong. And my sister had known. Not everything, but enough. I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring. Neither of us spoke. Finally she whispered, "Hi." I closed my eyes. Why now? Because Dad found something. What? Audit records. I sat up. What audit records? Dad's accountant was reviewing some old business files. He found a transfer from Stephen's company to another account. Then he traced the money. And? Claire began crying. The account belongs to Daniel. I froze. What? My brother? I know. No, Claire. What are you saying? Daniel received part of the money. My mind went completely blank. I thought of the kitchen. Daniel standing against the refrigerator. His accusation. His certainty. You were the only person outside the family who knew about the account. I remembered his exact words. I had thought he was defending Claire. Now I wondered if he had been defending himself. I didn't call Daniel. I called my father. He answered immediately. "Emily?" His voice sounded different. Older. Broken. "Did you know?" Silence. "Dad?" "No." "Did you know Daniel received money from Stephen?" Another silence. "I found out yesterday." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to." "When?" "I don't know." I laughed bitterly. 3 years? Emily, please. No. I need you to listen. I listened for 3 years. He breathed heavily. Your brother borrowed money from Stephen. For what? I don't know. You don't know? He says it was a business investment. Was it? I don't think so. I stood up. Where is Daniel? At the house. Does Mom know? Yes. And Claire? Yes. I stared at the wall. So everyone knows now. Yes. And what do they want? My father didn't answer. I already knew. They wanted forgiveness. But forgiveness was not something I could hand over simply because they had finally discovered the truth. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't been there in 3 years. The new locks were still on the doors. My father opened it. For a second, neither of us moved. He looked smaller. Not physically, just emotionally. Like someone who had spent 3 years carrying a weight he hadn't admitted existed. Come in, he said. I stepped inside. Everything looked almost exactly the same. The same hallway, the same framed photographs, the same wooden staircase. But it didn't feel like home anymore. My mother was sitting in the living room. Claire was beside her. Daniel was standing near the window. Nobody spoke. Finally, my mother stood. Emily, I nodded. She started crying. I didn't. She walked toward me. I am so sorry. I held up my hand. Don't. She stopped. I know what you want. No, you don't. Yes, I do. She shook her head. You think we want you to forget. I think you want me to forgive you so you can stop feeling guilty. Her face changed, because she knew I was right. My father sat down. That's not fair. I looked at him. Isn't it? He rubbed his hands together. We were wrong. You weren't just wrong. He lowered his eyes. You believed the worst about me. Yes. You changed the locks. Yes. You told relatives I couldn't be trusted. My mother started crying harder. We were scared. No. I shook my head. You were angry. You were disappointed. You were embarrassed, but you weren't scared. I looked at Claire. You were scared. She nodded through her tears. I was, and you lied. Yes. The room became silent. Daniel finally spoke. I didn't know where the money came from. I turned toward him. You received it. I thought it was a loan. From a man you barely knew? He offered me a business opportunity. You never told anyone. No. Then you knew it was wrong. Daniel looked away. I made a mistake. So did Claire. He looked at her. So did Mom and Dad. He looked at them. Then he looked back at me. I never told them to cut you off. I almost laughed. You didn't have to. He frowned. What does that mean? You stood in that kitchen and called me a liar. I thought you had done it. No. He didn't answer. You wanted me to be guilty because it made your situation easier. His face tightened. That isn't true. Then tell me what happened. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. My father looked at him. Daniel, my brother finally sat down. I was desperate. For what? Debt? Nobody moved. I owed money, he continued. I borrowed from Stephen because he said he could help me flip some properties. Then everything went bad. So you took Claire's money? No. But you got some of it. Yes. Why? Stephen paid me to connect him with people. I stared at him. So you knew he was moving money around? Not like that. Did you know he was taking Claire's savings? No. I believed that part. And somehow that made everything more complicated. Because Daniel wasn't the mastermind. He was just another person who had made selfish choices and then watched someone else pay the price. My father stood. I should have protected you. I looked at him. Yes? He nodded. I should have asked questions. Yes? I should have listened. Yes. My mother stepped forward. I want my daughter back. I looked at her. I was your daughter when you believed I stole from Claire. She began crying. I know. I was your daughter when you changed the locks. I know. I was your daughter every day for 3 years. I know. Why didn't that matter then? She couldn't answer. That was the question none of them could answer. Claire approached me after everyone else went quiet. She held something in her hand. The old photograph. The one she'd sent me. I looked at it. You sent this? She nodded. I couldn't say it out loud. Why? Because I was ashamed. You should have been. She flinched. I immediately regretted how harsh it sounded. But I didn't apologize. Not yet. She sat down. I ruined everything. No. She looked surprised. You made a terrible decision. I destroyed our family. No. I looked at her. We all did. She started crying. I missed you. I looked away. I missed you too. That was the first honest thing I'd said to her in years. She reached for my hand. I let her. Only for a second. Then I pulled it back. I can't go back to how things were. I understand. I don't think you do. Then tell me. I took a breath. I can forgive you someday. Her eyes filled with tears. But forgiveness isn't the same as pretending it never happened. She nodded. I know. And I don't know if I'll ever trust you the same way. I understand. And I need time. She whispered. Okay. Then my mother asked the question I'd been expecting since I walked through the door. Can you forgive us? I looked at all of them. For 3 years, I'd imagined this moment. I thought I'd scream. I thought I'd finally tell them everything I'd been holding inside. I thought I'd walk away feeling powerful. Instead, I felt tired. Very tired. I don't know, I said. My mother looked devastated. I continued. But I know I don't hate you. My father closed his eyes. I thought I did. I looked at him. But I don't. I took another breath. And maybe that's where forgiveness starts. Nobody spoke. I stood up. I need to go. My father nodded. Will you come back? I looked around the room. At the photographs, the furniture, the house I'd once thought I'd never leave. I don't know. And this time, nobody tried to stop me. The following year was strange. My family didn't suddenly become perfect. That would have been dishonest. There were awkward conversations. There were apologies that came too late. There were moments when old resentment resurfaced. My mother started therapy. My father apologized to me privately. Daniel repaid every dollar he had received from Stephen. Claire closed her first business idea, and eventually opened a much smaller photography studio with money she'd saved herself. She didn't ask me for help, that mattered. She respected the boundary I'd created. For a while, Claire and I only spoke through text, then short phone calls, then coffee. The first time we met for coffee after everything, we spent 20 minutes talking about weather. Neither of us mentioned the past. Then Claire suddenly laughed. I looked at her. What? She smiled. I remembered how you used to burn pancakes. I laughed. I did not burn them. You set off the smoke alarm. Once? 4 times. I shook my head. You're exaggerating. And for the first time in years, we laughed together. It wasn't a magical reunion. It didn't erase anything, but it was real. And real was enough. A year later, my mother gave me a box. It contained the things I'd left behind when they'd changed the locks. My high school trophies, old birthday cards, a necklace my grandmother had given me, and a photograph. The same photograph of Claire and me sitting on the porch. I turned it over. There was new writing on the back. My mother's handwriting. I should have protected both of you. I stared at those words, then I put the photograph back in the box. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Some wounds stop hurting every day. They just stop controlling your life. People sometimes ask me whether I forgave my family. The honest answer is yes. But not in the way they originally wanted. I didn't forgive them so we could pretend nothing happened. I forgave them because I didn't want their worst decision to become the center of my life forever. There is a difference. Forgiveness didn't reopen every door. It didn't give them automatic access to me. It didn't erase the 3 years I lost. And it certainly didn't mean I owed them the same version of myself they had abandoned. What it gave me was something much quieter. Freedom. My family eventually learned that apologizing doesn't erase consequences. My sister learned that fear can turn one bad decision into a devastating lie. My brother learned that staying silent when someone is being blamed can make you part of the damage. My parents learned that loving someone isn't enough if you refuse to listen to them. And I learned something too. For a long time, I thought being rejected by my family meant I had lost my identity. I thought if the people who raised me believed I was a thief, maybe there was something wrong with me. There wasn't. Their belief didn't define me. Their apology didn't define me either, neither did their rejection. I did. A few years after everything happened, Claire invited me to the opening of her new studio. It was small. Nothing like the dream she'd described when we were younger. But it was hers. There were photographs covering the walls, families, newborns, old couples, people laughing, people crying, life in all its imperfect forms. I stood in the middle of the studio and looked at a photograph she'd placed near the entrance. It was an image of 2 sisters sitting on a porch. I recognized the porch immediately, our grandparents' old house, the same place from the photograph she'd sent me years earlier. I looked at Claire. You took this? She smiled. I wanted to remember where we came from. I looked at the photograph, then at her. It's beautiful. She nodded. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss it. She hugged me. This time, I hugged her back. And for the first time, the hug didn't feel like an apology. It felt like a beginning. A few weeks later, I was at my parents' house for dinner. Not because everything was fixed, because we'd found a new way to be family. A smaller one, a more careful one. One built on boundaries instead of assumptions. My mother was in the kitchen. My father was arguing with Daniel about a football game. Claire was showing me photographs from her latest project. For a moment, I looked around the room. And I realized something strange. This wasn't the family I had lost. It was a different family. One that had finally understood how fragile trust was. My mother came over and placed a plate in front of me. You still don't like mushrooms, right? I smiled. No. She laughed. I always forget. You've only known me for 30 years. She smiled. I'll try to remember. I looked down at my plate. Something about that tiny exchange stayed with me. Because once, I would have wanted her to remember everything. Every sacrifice. Every birthday. Every childhood memory. Every reason she should have known me better. Now I understood something simpler. People can love you, and still fail you. They can regret it, and still not be able to undo it. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do isn't choosing between hatred and reconciliation. Sometimes you choose something in between. You choose peace. You choose boundaries. You choose to stop carrying the anger. And if, someday, trust grows again, you let it grow slowly. You don't force it. You don't demand it. You don't pretend. You simply give it room. Because when my family finally discovered the truth, they begged me to forgive them. And I eventually did. But I never put those 3 years behind me. I put them where they belonged. Behind the version of me who had spent years begging to be believed. In front of me was someone different. Someone who no longer needed anyone, even family, to confirm that she knew the truth about herself. And maybe that was the real thing I got back. Not my old family. Not my old life. Myself. Would you have forgiven your family after 3 years of believing a lie about you? Or would you have walked away for good?